What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch, making some money investing in fractional real estate online. Again today, if you already saw my 52-week challenge video, I put that out late, so two videos one day. Definite workaholic here, right? Still sitting on the couch though, so really not that bad. I'm going to show you, or we're going to go into this new mobile home park or trailer park, as is what I would call this, listed on Lofty. I think this listing popped up yesterday, maybe the day before. I mentioned in the Discord to this property. I was like, "Oh, I love trailer parks," and I was quickly corrected by the co-owner of this, saying, "Oh, no, no, we call them manufactured home communities." I actually just wanted to start off with that. I have quite a bit of experience working on financing manufactured home communities and trailer parks, and I think there's a difference. Those of us in the industry. Um, and I think he's just being a good salesman when he says that, right? But I think, if you want to talk about manufactured home communities, something like this Summit Ridge here in San Antonio, you drive into here and you barely notice you're not just, I mean, the homes, they're clearly manufactured homes, but the community looks very much like any other single family home community to the point where they also have amenities. They've got a pool, some of them have pickleball courts, whatever it is, but the homes in them are still manufactured homes. Um, I think most people in the industry, if they're talking about manufactured home communities, they think something like this. And if they are, but we'll still, a lot of us, at least those of us that have been in the industry a long time, will still call ones that look like this a trailer park, right? And it might be an old listing, right? Maybe those pictures are from a listing 10 years ago. I don't know. These are just on Realtor. But in my mind, this is a trailer park. I mean, there is a distinction. It is You wouldn't expect a property like this to trade on the same kind of cap rate as a property like this one, right? I mean, they're just very different. And so I do believe that there is a distinction between trailer parks and mobile home or manufactured home communities. Mobile homes, I think, are the ones that are built. I don't think there are any of those anymore. I think those were all built like prior to 1978. There was some certain point in time where basically there was a new code for how they should be built, and it changed the terminology from mobile home to manufactured home. But I still think that there are some, a lot of people, especially people in the industry, quite a bit, will refer to certain quality of parks more often as trailer parks. Uh, More than anything, just so just qualitatively, those terms will give you an idea of what we're talking about, right? Are we talking about one like the Summit Ridge one I just showed you, or are we talking about one where we've got a piece of commercial property that's behind some other industrial buildings and we squeezed in some old properties, right? That being said, just because it's a trailer park, like I said, I mean, I started off that conversation with I love trailer parks, right? There's a lot of money to be made owning properties like this. Depending on where you're located, you might not be able to build these anymore. Although I think, this is, as far as I could tell, I looked up the zoning. I believe it's this property here. I asked him to confirm, and he did. So it looks like it's, to me, by looking at their zoning map, that it's outside the city limits of Lubbock. And the appraiser also mentioned that in the appraisal. And so I believe, they can do whatever they want there. So this person next door could have one as well. But in a lot of places that you can't, if this were inside the city limits and it was a piece of vacant land, um, 99 times out of 100 in today's world, you're not going to be able to build a new trailer park, mobile home park, either one. And that's one of the reasons that they, um, are pretty sought after because they are very affordable housing. And regulations have kept us from building a whole bunch of them. You can't just put one of those anywhere that you want to. Um, so, I think that there is a benefit and a need for them. And I guess I'm going to kind of jump around quite a bit, especially when we're doing commercial properties like this. There's no way for me to give you a really full picture of the due diligence, and so I'm gonna just sort of jump to the things that I think are most interesting. I spent hours going through a whole bunch of different stuff, but so the zoning one for this, it looks like it's outside city limits. That's why, so they can basically do whatever they want with that property. Uh, I looked up the tax bills just because there was some issue with one of the other properties with this co-owner, but this looks like the tax bill's paid, so I thought that was good. Looked at the flood map. It is in a flood zone. For all the residential properties I've looked at, I've told you that's usually just a no-go for me. For a mobile home park, I think, or trailer park, I would think about it a little bit differently, or manufactured home community, any of those, right? It's because you just own the land, right? You own the lots and you're renting the homes, or you're renting the lot, and the person renting from you owns the home and just pays you lot rent. And so you have very little that can be damaged in a flood. I still don't want my residence homes being flooded very often, but as a mobile home, it can be, they can be elevated very easily, to a point where, you don't really have any danger of flooding. I don't know how deep it gets over here. So this by itself wouldn't stop me from buying this property. But it is one thing I wanted to know, right? In a flood zone. And so, so one of the things, when he, there were some comments, I don't remember if it was on the listing itself or in the Discord, but I think it is actually in the property listing itself, mentions that this is in the path of progress. Yeah, path of progress, new development, value of land is skyrocketing. And that could be true. The value of land around this development could be true. Uh, but, usually land in floodplains is not highly sought after for development. And so I would just keep that in mind if the thought is, because a lot of people buy these with the idea that we're land banking, right? Like someday the real value is in the land. Once development catches up to this, we're going to do something else here. If that's the thought process in buying into this one, you just have to keep in mind, okay, we're in a flood zone. Um, the city of Lubbock has this, I don't like it quite as good as San Antonio. San Antonio's actually, it gives you one map that you can stick all these layers on top of. Maybe you can do it here, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. But one of the things that they gave us is this growth through annexation city of Lubbock. And so you can actually just go through over time, and look at how it's grown, like what, in different periods of time, what they annexed. And so, you can say this property is in the path of progress because Lubbock is just expanding. As far as I could tell, it looks like it's really just expanding, um, pretty well all around the city. So yes, it's progressing that way, but I don't know. I couldn't, not from this map and not from some of the other stuff I looked at. I couldn't really verify or, or refute that claim, right? And I think it's one of those buzzwords that a lot of developers use, like, oh, we're buying in the path of progress. That's how we make the money. And, it's a good way to imply that the value is going to go up. But without like specific master plans, which sometimes cities do have these master zoning plans where, will lay out what they're doing in the future. I didn't find one. It doesn't mean they don't have one. But without, normally if I see a comment like that, I'd really like some backup for that, right? Like why? And I realize you're limited, but if maybe drop a link in there if there's something. But there's only so much you can put in these listings. But um, anytime that I'm making a claim like that, I'd like to have some backup. So anyway, just wanted to show that. Let's see what else. So it's showing a pretty good yield, based on recent collections. Um, Do I have the cash flow statement? Yeah. So a couple of things that I noticed. So mobile home parks, what are we worried about? What's different, right? And that's some of the things that I want to share, a little bit of the experience that I have with this. One of the big things that I always care about is what is this, where's the water and sewer coming from? Because a lot of times these are rural properties. You're not in city or water sewer. And sometimes it can be huge expenses. This is a pretty small community. Um, I noticed when I was looking through this cash flow statement that they provided, that they had a septic pumping fee. So that made me believe it's on septic. When I looked in the appraisal, it confirmed that as well. And so that's not the worst system, but it's certainly, I'd much rather be on city water and sewer. But it appears there's a septic system. And then we're going to get into it a little bit later. There seems to be some info about a well, um, that I don't know. It creates more questions than it answers for me. But that's some of the things. One of the reasons sometimes you can figure stuff out looking at the income and expenses, and it's why I like to see those. Just broken out monthly like this, not just like lump sum. Hey, what's our net operating income? Um, I think on here, if I recall correctly, they don't have in expenses. Yeah, total utilities. And then they give you an NOI, but this isn't. I don't think that tax and insurance is coming out of here, and I think that's what makes it different from, or part of what makes it different from here. You end up with an NOI. Um, let's see, well, they do it as annual cash flow, 32,201. That's significantly different than what we see here, but it's because they're checking out pulling out some of those other numbers. What I found interesting is in the appraisal they actually estimate a higher NOI. Um, I think there's some limitations to the information that they have and whatnot, but so it seems to me that this yield is actually, um, at least from what I've looked at, it seems like reasonably repeatable. Now, one of the things, March has pretty high collections compared to February. January had much better, right? Like you can see, like they sort of fluctuate. And so the reason I say that is because Lofty is always annualizing last month, right? And I think part of this is, you can see one, sometimes we have prepaid rent, but they just have people get behind and then they catch up. And so, taking an average of this is what I'd really want to use. But what is that average? Let's figure that out. 43071.57 divided by 12. Yeah, so the average is a little bit lower than that, but not by a lot. And then, they back out some prepaid rent. Um, I don't know, so I think that yield is, even though a lot of the properties, that's my number one concern. When I was looking at I looked at the numbers the appraiser gave, I looked at their cash flow. Um, I'm not terribly worried about it. I think that's maybe a reasonable number. So that's not the risk I'm most concerned with this property. If I were, one of the things, part of the reason that it is the way it is because it's, or is so high, is because you have the leverage effect that we always talk about on Lofty, where this loan is being paid for off the books, off of the DAO books. Let's see. Did I look at these loan docs? I don't think that I looked at this loan payment. Yeah, so what is this? 18. What if we multiply that, right? 15.74. It's a little bit concerning that there's stuff blocked out of that. 21,000. Yeah, so I mean, this is a property that appears to be able to actually cover its debt, which is good, right? We don't always see that when we're looking at these lofty properties. So one of the things that I'm always concerned with, right? Like, I don't care if I get a high yield if the property itself can't pay for itself. In that regard, I think it's pretty good. And it makes a lot of sense because when you have a trailer park or a mobile home community, manufactured home community, whatever you want to call it, I'm just going to stop correcting myself. Uh, you have very few expenses relative to, if you compare it to like owning your expense ratio is much lower than if you compare it to owning like multifamily or something like that. And so, as long as you have reasonably priced debt, and that loan is about half of what the appraised value is, then it doesn't become a problem like we've seen in some other properties that we. So what are some of my concerns though? One, when we're looking at the underlying asset, they're using, so the full, let's see, let's go to the appraisal. Oh, where did it go? Did I close it? I hope not. Okay, 420,000, and they're saying, 441. So what did we do? Did we do the full 5%? I think that's what we did. 420, 5.05. Yeah, right. So he's doing the full 5% freemium that Lofty allows. I know Lofty allows it, and I know people keep buying properties at these premiums, and I don't really understand why they're doing it, right? Like in my mind, I guess it makes I understand why the co-owners that are selling their interest into the system want to do it, right? They're getting paid something for it, but um, I have a really hard time paying a premium unless it's just I have a really strong belief in the property itself. that the future is going to be better than the current, or maybe I believe it's a real strong yield. And so I don't know, if this is if I really had a lot of confidence, if well, let me just go into some other stuff. But so maybe I'd pay that premium for this type of yield, if everything else with the property were perfect. Um, One thing I wanted to share, this is there's quite a bit of news about Thunder Sun Homes, who is, the co-owner. Let's see, the person bringing this to the site, or the company, right? Thunder Sun Homes. If you Google them, there's a lot of negative press out there. But some specific that I think are about this mobile home park, I wasn't 100% sure, but it seemed to be the same park to me. And when I looked at some additional data, and a lot of times landlords get negative press, and so it doesn't necessarily mean they're doing something wrong, but it does help point you in some directions of things to look at, right? Um, but anyway, a ton of good information in these. Oh, so I start off talking about the market itself. I talked about the Lubbock market a little bit in the brownfield property video I did. So if you want to look for that one, that's, I think I just said Lubbock mobile home, or Lubbock multifamily. I think you can find it under that. It'll talk a little bit about the market. But actually, one of the great things about commercial appraisals is they give you a ton of data on the market. And so Lubbock's a market I like. Just because I like it doesn't mean you should, right? You want to always do your own due diligence. That reminds me, I don't think I gave the disclosure yet today. Just because I do or don't decide to buy tokens in this property doesn't mean it's good or bad for you, right? You want to do your own due diligence. I'm just trying to share some of my thought process, some of the things that I'm looking out for, um, so some of the things that concern me, but it doesn't mean, I'm not trying to tell you what to do with your money. And so you want to do your own due diligence on the property and on the platform itself, right? Like don't just buy on Lofty because I am. Uh, in the description video, or into the description to this video, I have links to all the sites that I invest in fractional real estate on. Again, you want to do your own due diligence on any of them. I also have a link to a Discord that I've set up for just anybody interested in fractional real estate investing in general, to jump in and discuss on. We have separate channels for the different platforms, and it's been great. There's about 30 of us now. Quite a few people talking in there every day about different properties. I actually learned a little bit about. I think that's where I first saw the Thunder Sun Home article, right? And so, just a place outside of the platforms themselves for us to get together and talk about this stuff. Um, and I don't know if I said it already, but if not, please like and subscribe. Oh, I'm going to start telling you to tickle that like button. I feel like that's one of my favorite ways that I hear it. Anyway, so to this appraisal, it was appraised at 420,000. Um, you know, I'm going to show you a couple of things though in here that concern me. Um, One of the first ones, well, one, it does say he shouldn't be sharing this with anybody else, but we are co-owners. I'm not really sure. It says without permission, so maybe they get permission to post this online. I don't know. But so this thing where it says the intended use was the sole purpose of assisting Thundersun Inc. in the valuation of the subject property for internal decision making. I didn't go back and look at some of the other commercial appraisals on Lofty, but that strikes me as an odd intended use because they are trying to sell some of the equity. So I don't know why that's not included in there. Um, they mentioned it's 14 unit mobile home park. Uh, the last time it's sold, so they've how long they've run it for. Um, Talk a little bit about I'm not going to go through the whole appraisal, but they do tell you about the city, and there's a lot to like about this city. Nice trend in the growth of the labor force, low unemployment rate. A lot of stuff that I looked through, and why I'm looking at this property, right? Because I would be interested in a well-run mobile home park uh, in Lubbock would be something that'd be pretty exciting for me, right? It describes the neighborhood. It's a lot of commercial, retail, light industrial, and residential. I think I already. Oh no, I didn't close the map, right? Oh well, I've got it pulled down in here, but it is. They do have some. Uh, it is not. When I say this is what I would call a trailer park, not a manufactured home community, it is certainly not the the worst one that I've ever seen, like by any stretch of the imagination. But it is, like if you look at what's around here, it's not other residential. It is, a powder coating place and millworks and then a farm behind it, right? So it isn't the ideal spot for a residential development like this. Um, but let's see. Let me go back. Keep talking about this here. But so if you're going to invest in this property, I would highly recommend that you read through the entire appraisal, everything that they have to say about this. I mean, because it does give you a ton of good info. This concerned me. They didn't have a full meets and bounds legal description or a survey. There wasn't one available. It's surprising to me that they don't have one on hand to share with the appraiser. Um, Hopefully they used one when they bought it. I don't know. I mean, I don't even buy single family homes without getting a survey. So, stuff like that always worries me a little bit, especially when there's other things that make me question the operator a little, right? But not the end of the world. They have the track description in here. Um, they describe the improvements, and this was sort of interesting to me. They said, okay, they have 13 occupied spaces with one tenant that's renting two of the spaces for a reduced rate. Do I have? I'm not going to show you the rent roll because it has people's names in it still. They didn't redact the tenants' names. But there are only 13 units shown in the rent roll. Um, and Austin in the Discord had said, and that's the co-owner who I think he's the owner of Thunder Sun Homes. But that he was like, oh well, we're hopeful to get that 14th one rented. And somebody asked him, well, why are there only 13 showing up on the rent roll? Usually you have vacant units showing up. And he said, oh well, we pay that there's a software cost for every line that we put in there, which is really strange to me. I mean, I have never heard that as a reason to not show vacant units. And then when I get into here and I look at this and it says, okay, there's 13 spaces and one tenant is renting two spaces, it doesn't really seem to imply to me that there's an empty space. And then it also says there's a 14th one. Let's see, where is it? 13 occupied spaces, one tenant renting two, paying reduced rate. Um, where is it? There's also just a comment about there's that the owners have one that's taking up a spot. So it didn't seem to me that there is actually a 14th unit that could be occupied. So I don't know. I think that there's that's a question I'd ask. I'd ask him. I mean, he is active in the Discord, so if you want to ask him, what's actually going on there? Is there really a 14th lot that we could put someone in? Because it's possible that that lot has a home that's owned by Thundersun and is going to sell to somebody who then will pay lot rent. I mean, that happens all the time. Owners of manufactured, communities sell the homes, make some money on that, and also rent the sites. So that could be what's going on, but the way that it was described in here, I just wasn't sure, especially because it doesn't show up as a vacant unit on the rent roll either, and the explanation for that just didn't really sit right with me. Um, when describing the highest and best use, they're like, well, you could develop it into all sorts of stuff. But a mobile home park is believed to be the most productive use. So, um, a lot of times I've read a lot of commercial appraiser or appraisals, and that's just a pretty common, like it's sort of a lazy comment, but it's you can't expect them to think of every possible use. Sometimes it's obvious. Like there were certain points in times in some cities where like the highest and best use was also always to just convert something to condos. Residential condos were because they were so expensive relative to everything else, but most of the time you're going to see they're going to say, oh, just keep it as it is, right? And that's what they're saying is the highest and best use. Um, they only did an income approach and a sales comparable approach. They didn't do a a cost approach. I think it makes a lot of sense because it's not really expensive to set one of these up, right? And so uh, it's more like I think the cost approach is challenging for something like this because the cost of doing it is very low, other than the work involved to actually do the planning, get the residents there, and so because you don't have a lot of improvements basically. So a lot of times the cost approach will make it look like it's not um it should be, it doesn't end up actually being reality compared to what these things trade for. Um, and a big part of that is because you can't just build them anywhere, like I was talking about earlier. So maybe you could rebuild it, build one for really cheap, but it's just you can't find a spot to do it. This is one of the things that bothered me a little bit when I was looking at the comparables. These are all, or I started to pull up their websites, and most of them are what I would consider a manufactured home facility, right, or community, right? They just seem like much nicer parks to me. Um, tree lined streets. Some of them have amenities. One of them that I looked at had a pickleball court there that they just put in. These, the fact that these are the comparables that they have is a little bit tough for me. My guess is it's tough, when the real small ones that are 10, 20 units are bought and sold, a lot of times those just get sold on the MLS, or they're not being, a commercial broker's not doing them. And so then they don't get reported in places that a commercial appraisers can easily find out about them. So I don't know. I really don't love that. I'd like to see, uh, comparables that look a lot more like the subject property. But I have worked in the appraisal industry before, and I know it's tough to, some things are just a lot tougher, especially you know with, with the amount of time that you have to do these, right? And it's um, a lot of times you just have your own database of these sales that you use for other ones, and well, it's a lot of work to get commercial comps. And so if you have an existing set, even if it doesn't match exactly, I mean, you just see people kind of using those. So I don't know, it gave me a little bit of worry. But then when you actually got to how much, um, oh, you know what? I think I skipped over though what I think is one of the important aspects that they talked about. Let's see. Yeah, the improvement description. I wanted to get into this. The real is that I don't know if it's right here, but a phase one wasn't performed, right? And so, if you don't know what a phase one is, when you buy commercial property, um, especially if you're going to finance it, almost every lender will make you get a phase one environmental report. They did not get one for this. And where did? Oh no, did I close it? No, but what they got and they called an environmental report was actually just this. Was a letter. And if you look in this, they say we didn't do a phase one. Let me see what they said actually. They basically said they didn't do it because they weren't given enough time to do it. And so they're doing a limited search on environmental risks. um, that to me is really worrisome because, like, why do we have this time pressure to bang this out here when, I mean, I don't know, if I'm just listing some equity in a property that I own and I'm trying to sell some equity on Lofty, like, why don't I have time to do a full phase one, right? So I don't know, that was a little bit odd to me, saying we don't have time for one of those. Because what it is typically going to be just a more detailed or comprehensive look at all the stuff. But the thing that worried me the most in this, so in the appraisal, it does confirm that it's on a septic tank, and it says that the water is a well. But on a description of this is saying, okay, a water well, pressure tank, and dilapidated well house were observed, that at one time it had a PWS registration, which is required if they're going to supply at least 10 connections or 25 people for at least 60 days. So, in my mind, if you have 13 or 14 mobile homes, you should be meeting this. But they're saying the status of the water system and well are unknown, uh, and either needs to be brought into compliance or property plugged and abandoned, properly plugged and abandoned. So this is something, if I were going to invest in this, I really want to know, is this where residents are currently getting their water from? And that was part of what that article was about their water being shut off. So, I thought when I first read this, my initial thought was, oh, maybe they've switched to city water and that's why this was abandoned. But then when I looked at the appraisal and they described the improvements, they mentioned that it's well and sewer, or well and septic, and so that's to me is a real concern, right? Like, uh, I would just want to know the answer to this before I'd invest in this, right? So that to me, this is one of the bigger issues. That and I really, if I'm gonna buy a commercial property, I want a actual phase one. And I think that, to give you an understanding of why that is, when you buy, and I don't want to, I don't want to get too deep into, trying to tell you what the law is about any of this stuff, because that's not my goal whatsoever. But just in general, when you buy commercial properties, there are certain items that are required, expected as due diligence. And so if you buy a property and you skip some of that expected due diligence and then later find out that you have a problem, you have uh, more responsibility for that problem than if you had actually checked the boxes that you're supposed to. So if you don't do a so if you do a phase one and some stuff like this pops up, usually a lot of times they'll say, okay, well now we have to do a phase two, and then that, depending on what that is, not always, but you want, it's going to just be more detailed. And so when they say, oh well, we did this quickly, we didn't have time for a full phase one. Yeah, it was not conducted due to time constraints on the part of the user. Wow, I am really just tripping over words. Sorry about that. Um, so I don't know. That's worrisome to me. If that were the only issue, maybe I wouldn't be as concerned, right? But now stuff's starting to stack up for me. Like I don't love that it's in a flood zone. Um, I don't love the general condition of it. And so, there were some pictures posted and they were like, oh, was this before or after the cleanup? Because he mentioned that they did a cleanup. And so, like, these pictures, April 2023, maybe they didn't own it yet. Um, but the pictures, let's see. But there were notes that the let's see, the environmental guy put in here. I think that there were um, like appliances and stuff sitting out. This was either in here or in the appraisal, but one of the two was like, hey, yeah, there's stuff just sitting out, and these were done like in the last month, right? And the property's been owned for a couple of years at least, and so those things seem to be existing currently. It's not as if it's like that was before they bought it, they cleaned it up, and it's actually working great now. So that worries me a little bit. Um, let's see. Yeah, and then they do the subject stabilized rental income right when they did their appraisal, and they did it off of the 14 spaces. Even though in my mind there's still a question like, are there really 14 rentable spaces? Like that's something I'd want to dig into more before I bought this. Um, I think there's a couple other things, but then they go down. Let's see. I'm really trying to keep these brief, but there's just so many things, especially with the commercial properties that I want to just think about and talk about. And so I'm really just trying to hit the highlights. I think if you read this whole appraisal, you read the whole environmental letter. Sorry about that. Just had a little my computer freeze. Yeah, if you read all through all the due diligence that they've provided, I think it'll at least lead you to ask all the right questions. And then, I would want to figure out like, well, why didn't we do a full phase one? Because my guess is not that it's time, because why are we in such a time pressure to get this listed on Lofty if you've already owned it for a while? It's probably more that it's more expensive. Um, that is my most gracious thought. I think it's also possible that there are some worries about what a full environmental might uncover, or if that's going to create some new liability. A lot of times you have owners that don't like to do them because they don't want to know what's wrong, because then they have to disclose that. Um, I'm not saying that's what's going on here. That's just one worry that I have when we're not seeing the type of documentation that I'm used to seeing for a commercial transaction. One of the things that I further worry about on this one, they gave us, okay, this is the range of capitalization rates or cap rates, right? And this is, I always assume everybody knows what this is, but you're just doing your NOI divided by, um, your purchase price or value. Uh, you've got these, I already showed you, right, some of these comps that they're using, and those comps are, 10, 12. I mean, you do have an 8.92, but in general, they all have higher cap rates. And then he says, and we also looked at this realty rates thing, and it's 9.88. And based on all of this, 9% is considered reasonable. And, it's not really my place to question the appraiser, but I really don't understand why am I using because the lower the cap rate, the higher the value, right? And so normally, I would expect the nicer an asset is, the better the quality of it, and the better the more durable the income from it, then that's going to give you a lower cap rate. And so, when I see some of these that were on the low end, that we end up getting into the very low end of the range, it does worry me. Like, why I'd love to have a little bit more explanation of like why that is the right rate, right? I mean, it's like 9.88 is this other thing that we looked at, right? This other survey. Okay, well, why do you think this one deserves a lower cap rate than the average? I don't know. That was one of the things that concerned me a little bit looking at that. When they do the improved sales, uh, I didn't dig into these too much, but you did at least have a couple of these smaller ones, and I think that are probably more in line with what you're thinking about. And what's interesting is, some of those do have a little bit lower cap rates. But one of the things too here is, you have this units per acre number, right? And so we're extremely dense relative to some of the lower cap rate ones as well, right? And so part of what can be going on in these less dense properties is maybe there's room to put more units. Um, or maybe it's just that makes them nicer, and so they should get a lower cap rate. So I don't know, that did worry me a little bit. Um, I feel like there's one more thing I want to talk about, but let me just scroll through real quick and make sure that's it. Uh, no, I think that's really all I want to talk about the appraisal. This is not the property. This is one of the comps that they used, and that one did have some RVs as well, which a lot of the larger communities will have both manufactured homes and a separate section for RVs. Uh, let's see. This is the older one, but it would be good if we had one thing you would think, if we had fantastic pictures of this. Let's see what we have here. All right, that's we got an aerial. It doesn't look that much different than that for me right now, right? Uh, I don't know what's happening here, but that looks like a bunch of trash out there. But like, if I were really proud of this and trying to list it, I'd be wanting to give you some good looking pictures, and for whatever reason, this is what we get, right? So without better information, I just have to assume it still looks like this when I'm driving through it, right? And this is, I don't know. I mean, it might not, but I think it's the job of the person who's trying to raise money for this to make sure that I know that it doesn't look like this anymore, right? Like I don't know why we're only getting these aerial pictures. Like it seems really strange to me. Um, somebody couldn't drive through here and give me a better close up, right? And so, but I mean, even from this though, you can tell the condition of this one's pretty rough. Now, one thing to keep in mind, they don't own the homes, right? I mean, they just own the lots. But the condition of the homes in your lot and are going to dictate who else is going to want to have a home in that lot. And it's going to, affect the amount of lot rent that you can get. And he did mention that he expects to increase the lot rents for each one. In the Discord, he said that. Um, that's one of the great things about Lofty, though, is I don't have to buy this right now, right? I can wait until next month and see if those rates went up, um, and then maybe buy it, right? And it's possible that the price of these tokens will go up in that time, but especially like if I'm not terribly concerned that that's the case because a lot of these haven't been selling out super quick. And I think even though I think there's a lot of excitement surrounding a manufactured home community, I was really looking forward to one that I'd be happy to invest in. Unfortunately, at the moment, I'm going to pass on this. I really, the well septic question. I'll probably ask that in the Discord. I don't know, or bet somebody else will. It's his discords are pretty active. A lot of people ask him questions, and he is, to his credit, getting in there and answering them. Um, not always having all the right answers because he is using a manager to do this. And if you go through the chat for Brownfield, the Discord channel for Brownfield, you'll see that he had a problem with the past managers and in the process of replacing them. Not sure if that's the best time to bring a new property to the site, right? If you're changing management on it, and so maybe we're not going to get the best possible detail that we would. Um, but I don't know. If the environmental and water issue, I think, kind of go together, right? Because like if you have a well on the site and there's possible contamination, which I'm not saying, it's just possible. It doesn't mean there is. In that letter, I mean, there was some discussion about reports, but no TCEQ, which is like, um, well, yeah, I mean, they're just saying they search the database. I don't even remember what it is. I took an environmental law class a long time ago, and there was a time, probably 15 years ago, that I would be able to speak about this intelligently. And now I really can't, and am just going to, I would just rely completely on what they, when I read these, I would read every item, but usually, want to read the conclusions most carefully. And so this is what he says, could not, yeah, not found in the TCEQ database, right? But there had been a report of a spill, but that there wasn't one in there, and then they explain why. But this is all stuff like I just really want to know the answer to if I'm going to invest. And maybe you don't, right? Maybe I'm going to YOLO 10 tokens or something, and it's $500, and it's a decent yield, and it's a small amount to risk. And I think there are people using Lofty in that method or in that manner. And in a certain sense, I'm doing that with some of the really discounted tokens in terrible markets. Um, but that I'm doing that, and I understand the risk that I'm taking, but I'm doing it with the expectation of a significantly higher return, and so far actually being able to realize that higher return on a lot of the ones that are very discounted. I would have a hard time, I think, paying, full value and actually a 5% premium to appraised value from an appraisal that I don't even really love the comps that they're using or the cap rate. I'd have a hard time paying that big of a premium on something that I have like these unanswered questions that I have a little bit of risk for. If I think about like, okay, I'm going to get this rental yield, and then am I getting any appreciation? They're not projecting any, right? Is that right? I think that's right. And so I think that's probably accurate, right? I mean, I don't know. Uh, Obviously, commercial properties go up in value as your NOI goes up in value, and so if they're sold based on a cap rate, but if I'm already paying a big premium, I mean, it might take me a long time to get back to that price. Um, I don't know. It's so for me, like I said, I mean, it's this is not going to be one I'm going to buy right now. It's possible. I do just really like this asset class. I mean, it's because like there's very little upkeep, right? Like if I do get favorable answers for what the well, water, and septic situation is, and like, because one of the problems too is when you have flooding and you have well and a septic and you have farmland behind it, and I think that something was mentioned in that letter too. You want to read it in full, but about how you can get, I don't know if it was nitrates or something from the farm, getting washed over to where your well is. All that stuff is really concerns me, right? But if I found out tomorrow and they said, oh no no, we've converted this to city water and sewer, well then I would be off to the races on this one because that, I'm okay with the condition of those homes if I'm getting a good yield and I'm not taking these other risks. Uh, as it stands right now, I might buy some of these tokens when they hit 25. Not that they necessarily will, but a lot of, if you look at all of these, a lot of properties do end up getting some discounted tokens. Even some of the best performers at some point in time have these dips in prices, and that'd be a time to buy. But for me, at least at this moment, I think that I'm going to pass on this. One thing I want to mention, Mogul does have a new listing that's going to come out on Sunday, but they emailed it out to their VIPs, which, as far as I can tell, is a lot of people. But you know, it's fun to be on that list, right? Because I know a lot of you have gotten. I think if you've just invested a few times, maybe, or maybe you have to go on the webinars. I don't know, but I'm going to do that video tomorrow. If you don't know, I guess they don't have a analysis tab yet, so I don't know how I'm going to do that. I might just talk a little bit about it and then do a follow up once they have the analysis tab because I want to jump on those quickly because of how quick some of them have sold out. Although it's a very big one, so I think it'll take a while. That's really it for me today. If you watch till the end, thank you for that. And you know, oh, people do. I watch my kid watches YouTube all the time, and people are always like, if you stay to the end, comment. So if you did, comment. Can't wait to see that mogul property, or just something like that, just to let me know, because that would be cool to see. I know a lot of you do. I mean, I talked to, you know, a lot of you. I've talked to a lot of you a lot now through Discord. Some of you through, you know, the Discord voice channel, email. It's been great for me because this is really my goal is to create this community where we can all work together to get, you know, find good investments and do this. So anyway, I think I already told you how excited I was about that in my other video. So I'm gonna really stop rambling now and probably go to bed soon. Until next time, I will keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.